The doors of the Galactic Defense Station Council Room slid open with a soft whoosh. Ambassador Tae-ho stepped inside, carrying a simple black briefcase in his right hand. The room was huge, with walls made of gleaming metal that reached up to a curved ceiling filled with stars. The long table in the center could seat 50 beings, and today it was almost full. Every alien soldier in the room turned to look at the human. The silence lasted only a few seconds before the first laugh echoed. Through the chamber, General Vextar from the Scolari Empire was the first to break. The reptilian creature stood nearly 8 feet tall with green scales that reflected the overhead lights like armor. His yellow eyes looked down at Tae-ho with clear disgust. "Look what the humans sent us this time," Vextar said loudly. Another weak diplomat in a cheap suit. His voice carried across the room like a challenge. The other soldiers around the table began to chuckle and whisper among themselves. Captain Zolm from the Hive Worlds clicked his sharp mandibles together. The sound was like breaking glass. His compound eyes moved up and down as he studied the human. "Do humans think talking will stop the Void Raiders?" he asked. The clicking grew faster, which meant he was very amused. "We need warriors, not weaklings who hide behind words." Tae-ho walked slowly toward the empty chair at the far end of the table. His black shoes made no sound on the polished floor. His dark suit was indeed simple compared to the gleaming armor and weapons that filled the room, but his face showed no emotion as he pulled out the chair and sat down. The laughter grew louder when Tae-ho opened his briefcase. Commander Wrath from the Geometric Coalition made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Her crystalline body was transparent blue and her voice rang like bell's paper, she said in amazement. "In the age of quantum computers and holographic displays, this human brings paper." Lieutenant Scrix floated in his gas-filled suit near the middle of the table. His helmet was filled with orange mist that swirled as he laughed. "I have not seen paper in over 50 cycles," he wheezed. "Do humans still use stone tablets too?" The mockery continued as Tae-ho calmly arranged his documents on the table. He pulled out reading glasses and put them on, which caused another wave of laughter. Captain Brutax from the warrior planet Krell stood up to his full 9 feet of height. His massive arms crossed over his chest as he looked down at the human. "This is what Earth sends to a war council," he rumbled. His voice was deep like an earthquake. His skin was covered in thick gray hide and old battle scars. A soft little man with paper and glasses while real warriors plan battle. Tae-ho began to read from his first document. His voice was quiet and steady, almost boring. "The latest intelligence reports show Void Raider movements in the Outer Rim sectors," he said. 17 civilian colonies have requested immediate protection. Alien soldiers were not listening. They were too busy making jokes about human weakness. General Vextar leaned back in his massive chair and gestured with one clawed hand toward his fellow officers. "Look at this pathetic display," he said. "Do humans even have real military forces, or do they send diplomats to every fight?" Captain Zolm stood on his 6 legs and moved closer to the table. His insect body was black and shiny like metal weapons. "Look at his soft skin," he observed, clicking his mandibles. "No natural armor, no claws, no poison sacs. How did such weak creatures ever leave their home planet?" Several soldiers laughed so hard they had to hold their sides. Commander Wrath chimed like broken bells as her crystalline body shook with amusement. "Perhaps they float through space in bubbles," she suggested, "or maybe they ask nicely for safe passage." The human continued reading casualty reports from recent attacks. His voice never changed tone, even as the mockery grew louder. Around him, alien soldiers showed off their natural weapons and enhanced abilities. Lieutenant Scrix demonstrated how his gas suit could release toxic clouds. Captain Brutax flexed muscles that could crush steel. "This is what real strength looks like," human growled. Brutax. "Not words on paper, not meetings and discussions. Real power comes from fang and claw and the will to use them." He struck the table with his fist, leaving a dent in the metal surface. Tae-ho looked up from his papers for the first time since sitting down. His dark eyes moved slowly around the room, taking in each laughing face. "You want to know about strength?" he asked quietly. The question was so soft, some soldiers had to lean forward to hear it. The laughter died down slightly. "General," Vextar wiped tears from his yellow eyes. "Oh, please, human, tell us about strength. Tell us what your soft species knows about real power." His scales rippled with continued amusement, but something in Tae-ho's voice made a few soldiers pay closer attention. The human diplomat looked tired, much older than his face suggested. "You think strength is about claws and armor?" he said, still speaking quietly. "You think power comes from the size of your weapons, Commander?" Wrath chimed softly. "Of course it does. What else could strength mean? Humans have no natural weapons, no thick skin, no poison or acid. How can you possibly understand true power?" Captain Zolm moved even closer, his compound eyes focusing on the human. "Tell us, Diplomat, what does your weak species think strength means? Perhaps you believe it comes from writing treaties or asking enemies to please stop fighting." The mockery reached new heights as more soldiers joined in. They banged weapons on the table and roared with laughter. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder during a storm. Some aliens stood up and demonstrated their fighting stances, while others showed off scars from famous battles. Lieutenant Scrix floated higher in his gas suit. "I have fought in over 200 battles," he announced proudly. "I have seen worlds burn and fleets destroyed. What could this human possibly teach warriors like us?" Tae-ho returned his attention to the papers in front of him. He turned to a new page, and his hands seemed to shake slightly. The alien soldiers noticed this and thought it was fear, which made them laugh even harder. "Look, the human is scared just reading about battle." Captain Brutax pointed at Tae-ho with one massive finger. "He probably faints at the sight of blood, General." Vextar leaned forward with a cruel smile growing across his reptilian features. "Tell me, Diplomat, have you ever even seen a real fight? Or do humans just hide behind their lawyers and treaties while real warriors do the dying?" The other soldiers banged their weapons on the table in agreement. The sound was deafening. Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles so rapidly it sounded like machine gun fire. "I bet this human has never held anything stronger than a pen in his entire soft life," he declared. More laughter filled the room as aliens shared stories of human cowardice they had heard. Some claimed humans always retreated from battle. Others said humans paid other species to fight for them. A few suggested humans were so weak they could not even lift proper weapons. Through it all, Tae-ho sat quietly reading his reports. His hands continued to shake slightly as he turned pages. The trembling grew worse when he reached a particular document. The alien soldiers noticed this, and their mockery became even crueler. "The human is terrified," Lieutenant Scrix observed. "Look how his soft hands shake like leaves in wind." "Perhaps we should call for medical assistance, Commander." Wrath chimed with musical laughter. "Maybe he needs to return to his safe, Little Earth, where nothing dangerous ever happens." But then something changed in the room. Atmosphere. Tae-ho had stopped reading and was staring at one particular paper. His dark eyes seemed focused on something far away. The shaking in his hands grew more noticeable. Captain Brutax noticed the change first. The massive warrior stopped laughing and tilted his scarred head. "What is wrong with the human?" he asked. His deep voice cut through the noise. The room grew quieter as other soldiers noticed Tae-ho's strange behavior. General Vextar leaned forward with renewed interest. "Perhaps the diplomat has finally realized he is out of his depth," he suggested. But when Tae-ho looked up from the paper, his eyes held something the alien soldiers had not expected. The tired look was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Something that made a few warriors shift uncomfortably in their seats. The latest attack hit Colony 7. Taeho said quietly, 23 civilians died. His voice cracked slightly on the words 23. For just a moment, the laughter in the room stopped completely. The moment of silence did not last long. General Vextar was the first to break it with another loud laugh that echoed through the chamber. His yellow eyes gleamed with renewed cruelty as he looked at the human diplomat. "Oh, look, the human is getting emotional," he said mockingly. "Are you going to cry for us, diplomat? Show us those famous human tears." The other alien soldiers joined in the laughter again, thinking that Taeho shaking hands meant he was afraid Lieutenant Scrix floated closer in his orange gas-filled suit. "Look how he trembles," he wheezed. "The soft human cannot even handle reading casualty reports." Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles rapidly as he studied the human with his compound eyes. "I have seen this before in weak species," he announced. "Fear makes them shake like this when they realize they are out of their depth." "Commander," Wrath chimed like broken wind chimes as her crystalline body shook with amusement. "Perhaps we should get him a blanket," she suggested, "or maybe some warm milk to calm his nerves." Captain Brutax stood up again, towering over the table at his full 9 feet of height. His massive fists slammed down on the metal surface, leaving new dents. The sound boomed through the room like cannon fire. "Tell me, diplomat," he growled, "have you ever even seen a real fight?" The gray-skinned warrior began pacing around the table, his heavy footsteps making the floor vibrate. "Or do humans just hide behind their lawyers and treaties while real warriors do the dying?" He stopped directly behind Taeho's chair and leaned down close enough that his hot breath touched the human neck. Taeho did not turn around or flinch. He simply continued looking at the paper in his hands. The document seemed to hold his complete attention, even as the massive warrior loomed over him. "I bet this human has never held anything stronger than a pen in his entire soft life," Captain Zolm declared. The insect warrior moved on his 6 legs to get a better view of the human. His black, shiny body reflected the overhead lights like polished metal. General Vextar leaned forward across the table, his scaled face twisted into a cruel smile. "You want to know about fighting?" he asked mockingly. "You think you understand what real combat means?" The reptilian general stood up and began walking around the room, his claws clicking on the polished floor. "Look at him," he said to the other soldiers. "A soft, weak creature with no natural weapons, no armor, no ability to fight, yet Earth sends him to advise warriors." Lieutenant Scrick's gas suit hissed as he laughed. "We are the ones who face the Void Raiders in battle," he declared. "We are the ones who bleed and die in the cold of space. What could a pathetic human diplomat possibly know about real warfare?" The mockery grew even louder as more soldiers joined in, sharing stories of their own battle experiences. Captain Brutax showed off the deep scars across his chest from fighting plasma beasts. Commander Wrath demonstrated how her crystalline body could form sharp weapons from her own limbs. "This is what real warriors look like." "Human," Brutax roared, flexing his massive muscles. "These scars are proof of my courage in battle. Each mark shows where I faced death and survived." Captain Zolm began, describing his most famous victory when he single-handedly destroyed an entire enemy squad. "I used my natural acid to melt through their armor," he bragged. The cowards screamed as they died, like the weak creatures they were. The alien soldiers were so caught up in their boasting and mockery that they almost missed what happened next. Taeho slowly lifted his head from the paper and looked around the room. His dark eyes moved from one alien face to another, taking in each laughing warrior. The human expression was strange, not fearful as they had expected, but tired. Very tired, like someone who had seen too much and lost too much. His hands were still shaking, but now the soldiers could see it was not from fear. "You want to know about fighting?" Tae-ho asked quietly. His voice was still soft, but it carried a weight that had not been there before. The aliens leaned in, expecting another weak protest or plea for mercy. General Vex-Tar grinned, showing his sharp teeth. "Oh, please, human, tell us what your peaceful species knows about real combat. Tell us how hiding behind treaties makes you strong." But instead of answering directly, Tae-ho asked a different question, one that made no sense to the alien warriors. "You think I do not understand?" "War," he said. His voice grew slightly stronger but still remained quiet. "You think I do not know what it costs?" Commander Wrath chimed with confusion. "What kind of answer is that? Of course humans do not understand real cost. You live on your peaceful, little worlds protected by others, while real soldiers bleed and die in space." Lieutenant Scrix floated higher in his gas suit, waving his arms dramatically. "Humans know nothing of sacrifice," he declared. "You send diplomats to meetings, while warriors fight your battles for you." The mockery was reaching its peak when Captain Brutax moved to stand directly in front of Tae-ho. The massive warrior crossed his arms over his scarred chest and looked down at the seated human. "We are the ones who face." "The Void Raiders," he roared. "We are the ones who know real loss. We have seen our brothers die in battle. We have held our bleeding comrades as they took their last breath." Brutax leaned down until his scarred face was inches from Tae-ho. What could a pathetic human diplomat possibly know about sacrifice? What could your soft, weak species understand about the cost of war? The other aliens cheered and banged their weapons on the table in agreement. The sound was deafening like thunder during the worst storms. Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles so fast they sounded like breaking glass. "Yes, tell us," human General Vex-Tar demanded. "What does Earth know about losing soldiers in battle? When have humans ever paid the real price for freedom?" Lieutenant Scrix spun in his gas suit, leaving trails of orange mist. "You probably count losing a fingernail as a major injury," he wheezed. "Do humans even have real weapons, or do you fight with those papers?" The chamber filled with the loudest laughter yet as aliens shared jokes about human weakness. Some suggested humans used harsh language as weapons, others claimed humans fought by filing legal complaints against their enemies. Through all the noise and mockery, Tae-ho sat perfectly still. The paper in his hands had stopped shaking, but his knuckles had turned white from gripping it so tightly. When the laughter finally began to die down, he slowly stood up. The simple action of the human rising to his feet somehow made the huge chamber feel smaller. The alien warriors were still chuckling and making jokes, but something in Tae-ho posture made a few of them pause. He looked around the table again, meeting each pair of alien eyes with his own dark gaze. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but every word seemed to cut through the air like a blade. "Who killed my son?" The three words hung in the air like a challenge. The alien soldiers looked confused. General Vex-Tar tilted his reptilian head to one side. "What did you say?" Human Tae-ho repeated the question louder this time, each word clear and distinct. "Who killed my son?" His eyes moved from one alien face to another, searching each warrior as if looking for an answer. "Captain." Brutax stepped back slightly, his scarred face showing confusion. "What kind of question is that? We do not know anything about your offspring." The massive warrior looked around at his fellow soldiers seeking support, but found only puzzled expressions. Commander Wrath chimed uncertainly. "Why would you ask us such a thing?" But Tae-ho was not finished. The tired look in his eyes had changed into something harder, something that made even the bravest warriors shift uncomfortably in their seats. "My son was Captain Lee Dongwoo of the Human Colonial Marines," he said quietly. His voice grew stronger with each word. "He died 3 months ago, defending Station Kepler from Void Raiders." The laughter in the room died completely. The silence in the chamber was complete and terrible. No alien soldier moved or spoke as Tejo words echoed in their minds. Station Kepler. Every warrior in the room knew that name. It was famous throughout the galaxy, but not for Victory General. Vextar was the first to find his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "We heard about Station Kepler," he said slowly. His yellow eyes no longer held mockery, but something that looked almost like fear. "The battle was a massacre, Lieutenant," Scrix added quietly. His orange gas swirled nervously in his helmet. "No one survived the Void Raider attack. It was total destruction." Captain Zolm's compound eyes focused on the human diplomat with new attention. His mandibles clicked once, but not with. Amusement Station Kepler held for 6 hours against impossible odds. He said, "The defense was legendary, but futile." Tejo nodded slowly, his dark eyes never leaving the alien faces around him. He was 24 years old, the human said, his voice carried across the silent chamber like a funeral bell. "My son had just been promoted to captain." He was so proud of his new rank commander, Wrath's crystalline body had stopped chiming completely. Her transparent blue form seemed dimmer somehow. "We did not know you had military family," she said quietly. The words sounded hollow in the massive room. Tejo walked slowly around the table, his footsteps the only sound. "You did not ask," he replied simply. "You saw a man in a suit and assumed weakness. You saw papers instead of weapons and decided I knew nothing about war." The alien soldiers watched him move between their chairs, feeling something they had not experienced in years. Shame. It was a bitter taste in their mouths as they realized their terrible mistake. But every human diplomat, every human traitor, every human teacher has someone fighting for them somewhere in the galaxy. Tejo continued. His voice grew stronger as he spoke. "Every one of us has buried friends, family, or comrades. Captain." Brutak's massive form seemed to shrink as he listened. The scarred warrior who had boasted about his own battles now looked at his feet. "We meant no disrespect to your loss," he rumbled. "But you did show disrespect," Tejo said, stopping directly behind the general chair. "You mocked human sacrifice while sitting safely in this station. You laughed at human weakness while human blood kept the shipping lanes open." General Vextar's scales rippled with embarrassment as the truth hit him. The Kepler defense had indeed kept 3 major trade routes secure for months afterward. Thousands of ships had traveled safely because of that sacrifice. The distress call came at 300 hours. Tejo said, continuing his slow walk around the table. "My son unit was outnumbered, 50 to 1. The Void Raiders sent their entire assault fleet. Lieutenant Scrix's gas suit hissed quietly as he processed the numbers, 50 to 1. Those odds were beyond hopeless. Any rational commander would have ordered immediate retreat, but they held the station long enough for civilian transports to escape Tejo's voice, never wavered. All 43 Marines died that day. Every single human soldier chose death over abandonment of their duty. The alien warriors began to understand the true scope of what they had mocked. These were not cowards or weaklings. These were soldiers who had faced certain death without flinching. Captain Zolm moved closer to the table, his 6 legs carrying him silently across the floor. "Why did your government not tell us about this sacrifice?" he asked quietly. "Why keep such heroism secret? Because that is not who we are," Tejo explained. He stopped walking and faced the assembled aliens directly. "Humans believe actions speak louder than words. While you boast about your strength, we are already in the battle." The human diplomat pulled out another folder from his briefcase and opened it on the table. Inside were more documents and photographs. The faces of young humans in military uniforms looked up at the alien soldiers. "While you plan for glory, we are saving lives," Tejo said. His finger pointed to different photos as he spoke. "The Battle of Rim Station, 12 human ships held off an entire Void Raider fleet for 6 hours, all hands lost. But the civilian colonies were saved. Commander Wrath leaned forward to look at the images. Her crystalline form chimed softly with what sounded like regret. These are children, she observed. Many look barely old enough to leave their home worlds. They were children? Tai-Ho agreed. But they fought like veterans. The Battle of New Busan. 300 human Marines against 5,000 raiders. The Marines knew they could not win. But they bought time for the evacuation. General Vex Tar studied the photographs with new eyes. His reptilian features showed confusion and growing respect. "I do not understand," he said slowly. "Why do humans not speak of these victories? Why hide such courage? We do not hide it." Tai-Ho replied, "We simply do not need to prove our worth through words. Every species knows humans are in the fight. They know we hold the line while others debate." Strategy, Lieutenant Scrix floated closer to examine the documents. "These battles, the casualties, the sacrifice your people have been carrying the heaviest burden while we called you weak." Tai-Ho nodded gravely. "Every diplomat you see has buried friends, family, or comrades," he repeated. "We seek peace because we know the true cost of war. We have paid that cost over and over again, Captain." Brutax looked up from the photographs, his scarred face showing shame. "Forgive us, Ambassador," he said quietly. "We did not understand. We thought you were cowards." "Understanding is why I am here," Tai-Ho said. "Not to be mocked, but to prevent more deaths. To make sure no other father has to identify his son's body from DNA fragments because nothing else remained." The words hit the alien soldiers like physical blows. They had daughters and sons, too, brothers and sisters who might face similar fates. The mockery they had shown now seemed not just cruel, but ignorant. Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles once, in what his species used as a gesture of deep respect. "Your son died a warrior death," he said formally. "In our culture, such sacrifice is honored. Above all victories, many cultures honor warrior sacrifice." Tai-Ho agreed, "But humans prefer living heroes to dead ones. We would rather find ways to avoid the sacrifice entirely. That is why I carry papers instead of weapons." General Vex Tar stood up, slowly his massive frame casting shadows across the table. "Then teach us, Ambassador," he said formally. "Show us this human wisdom that seeks to preserve life instead of glorifying death." The mood in the chamber had changed completely. The alien soldiers, who had entered ready to mock a weak human diplomat, now faced a father who had lost his child to war. A man whose entire species was fighting and dying while others argued about glory. Commander Wrath chimed softly, like wind through crystal caves. "What do you need from us?" she asked. "How can we honor your son, sacrifice, and prevent more such losses?" Tai-Ho looked around the table at faces that now showed respect instead of mockery. "Trust," he said simply. "Real cooperation. Instead of each species fighting alone, we combine our strengths." Lieutenant Scrix nodded eagerly. "Human stealth technology is legendary in the fleet," he said. "Our gas-based weapons could be devastating when used with your surprise tactics." Captain Brutax flexed his massive arms thoughtfully. "Scalari firepower with human precision targeting," he mused. "The Void Raiders would face something they have never seen before. But trust requires understanding," Tai-Ho said, "and understanding requires truth. The truth is that humans have been fighting this war longer and harder than anyone else in this room." He pulled out one final document and placed it on the table. It was a simple list of numbers. Casualty reports from the past year showing human losses in every major battle. Against the Void Raiders, 10,000 soldiers. General Vex Tar read aloud, his voice showing shock. 10,000 human deaths in 1 year. Those are not numbers on a report, Tejo said quietly. Those are sons and daughters who will never come home. Those are friends who will never laugh again. Those are the price we have already paid. The alien soldiers stared at the document in stunned silence. None of their own species had suffered losses even close to that scale. Yet humans had continued, fighting without complaint or demands for recognition. You called us cowards, Tejo said, breaking the silence. You called us weak because we prefer talking to fighting. But the truth is, we fight so much that we are desperate for any other solution. The weight of understanding settled on the chamber like a heavy blanket. These humans were not weak diplomats hiding from battle. They were exhausted warriors hoping to find a better way. We will help you find that better way, General Vextar said with formal gravity. Your son's sacrifice will not be forgotten, and it will not be wasted. Tejo returned to his seat and pulled out a different folder that was thicker than all the others. The alien soldiers watched in respectful silence as he spread new documents across the table. These papers were different, covered with tactical maps and battle reports instead of casualty lists. Would you like to see the real human military record? He asked. His voice was calm again, but there was steel underneath it now. The tired look in his eyes had been replaced by something harder and more determined. In the past year alone, humans have fought in 67 major battles against the Void Raiders, Tejo said as he arranged the papers. We have lost over 10,000 soldiers, but we have also saved millions of civilian lives. Captain Zolm moved closer on his 6 legs, his compound eyes scanning the tactical reports. These numbers cannot be accurate, he said with disbelief. No single species could sustain such heavy combat operations. General Vextar leaned forward to examine the battle maps, his scaled fingers tracing the locations. 67 battles, he repeated slowly. That means humans have been in combat almost every other day for months. These are not numbers on a report, Tejo said, pulling out a collection of photographs. Young human faces smiled back at the alien soldiers from military portraits. These are sons and daughters who will never come home. These are the real cost of keeping the galaxy safe. Lieutenant Scrick's gas suit fogged with nervous breathing as he studied the images. I had no idea the losses were so high, he admitted quietly. His orange mist swirled faster, showing his agitation. Why did we not know about this? Commander Wrath's crystalline body chimed with what sounded like guilt. We receive daily reports about Void Raider activities, she said, but they never mentioned human casualties in such detail. Of course they did not. Tejo replied simply, humans do not brag about our wars. We do not make grand speeches about our victories. We just fight and die quietly while everyone else argues about strategy. The human diplomat pulled out a specific battle report and placed it where everyone could see. The Battle of Outer Rim lasted 14 hours. He said human destroyers held off 3 Void Raider dreadnoughts until civilian evacuation was complete. Captain Brutax studied the tactical display with professional interest. 3 dreadnoughts against destroyers, he rumbled. The size difference alone should have made victory impossible. The human ships used ramming attacks in the final phase, Tejo explained. His finger pointed to specific locations on the map. Captain Park Ji-min rammed his destroyer directly into the Raider flagship. Both ships were destroyed, but it broke their formation. Lieutenant Scrix floated higher to get a better view of the documents. Ramming attacks are suicide missions, he observed. No crew survives such tactics. Why would they choose certain death? Because civilian transports were still evacuating. Tejo said simply. Captain Park knew his sacrifice would save 3,000 families. His ship bought the time needed for everyone to escape. The alien soldiers looked at each other with growing amazement and shame. They were beginning to understand that human tactics were not based on glory or victory, But on protecting innocent lives, General Vex Tar picked up another report. The defense of Trade Station 7. He read aloud, 100 human Marines against 2,000 Void Raiders. How is such a battle even possible? The Marines had superior defensive positions and used every advantage available. Tae-ho explained they held for 18 hours until the Raider fleet received orders to withdraw. All Marines died at their posts. Commander, Wrath chimed softly. Like morning bells, they could have retreated and saved their lives, she observed. Why choose death over withdrawal? Because withdrawal meant the trade station would fall and 3 colony worlds would lose their supply lines. Tae-ho answered. Those Marines knew their deaths would keep entire planets from starving. Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles in what his species considered deep respect. This is true warrior behavior, he declared. But why do humans not speak of such heroism? Why keep these victories secret? We do not keep them secret. Tae-ho corrected. We simply do not need applause for doing our duty. While other species debate honor and glory, humans are already in position. Fighting the next battle, the human diplomat spread out more. Tactical reports showing battle after battle where human forces had faced impossible odds. The pattern was always the same. Small human units holding defensive positions against overwhelming enemy numbers, buying time for others to escape. Captain Brutax traced his finger across multiple battle sites. These locations cover half the galaxy. He observed, humans are fighting everywhere at once. How do you maintain such widespread operations? We fight because someone has to. Tae-ho said, his voice carried the weariness of someone who had seen too much war. While you argue about territory and pride, civilians die. The Void Raiders do not wait for political solutions. Lieutenant Scrix studied a report about submarine warfare in the gas giant systems. Even in our home territory, he said quietly, human ships appear to help our mining fleets, then disappear before we can offer thanks. Captain Minho Stealth Squadron Tae-ho confirmed. They have been running silent support missions for 8 months. No recognition, no glory, just results. Your miners are alive because of their protection. General Vex Tar looked up from the documents with new understanding in his yellow eyes. You have been fighting our battles for us, he said slowly. While we mocked your weakness, you were bleeding for our people, not your battles, Tae-ho corrected. Everyone battles the Void. Raiders are everyone enemy. They attack human colonies and alien settlements with equal brutality. We fight them wherever they appear. Commander. Wrath crystalline form seemed to glow brighter as she processed this information. But surely your government seeks some recognition for these sacrifices, she said. Some acknowledgement of human courage. Recognition does not bring back the dead. Tae-ho replied simply, my government seeks results, not praise. We prefer living allies to grateful enemies. The alien soldiers were beginning to see humans in an entirely new light. These were not weak diplomats or cowardly traitors. These were exhausted warriors who had been carrying the heaviest burden in the war against the Void Raiders. Captain Zolm studied more battle reports. The tactics are always the same. He observed small units holding impossible positions until others can escape. Your species seems to specialize in sacrificial missions. We specialize in doing what is necessary, Tae-ho said. Whether that means sacrifice or survival depends on the situation. But we never abandon those who cannot protect themselves. Lieutenant Scrix floated closer to examine detailed casualty reports. These losses are staggering, he said quietly. How does your species maintain morale with such heavy casualties? We remember why we fight. Tae-ho answered. He pulled out a photograph showing a human family at some peaceful gathering. Not for glory or territory, but to make sure scenes like this remain possible. The image showed parents playing with their children in a garden, while elderly grandparents watched from nearby chairs. It was a scene of perfect peace and safety that seemed impossible during wartime. Every human soldier carries a similar picture. Tae-ho explained, they fight not for conquest, but to protect moments like this, to ensure that families can gather without fear of void raider attacks. Captain Brutax looked at his own battle scars with new perspective. We fight for honor and glory, he said quietly. But you fight for something more basic, the right to exist peacefully. General Vextar stood up slowly, his massive form casting long shadows. We have misjudged your species completely, he admitted. We saw weakness, where we should have seen strength. The truth about humans is simple, Tae-ho said as he gathered his papers. We are not the strongest species or the most advanced, but we are the most determined. We will not stop fighting until everyone is safe. Commander. Wrath chimed with what sounded like new resolve. Then we will fight beside you, she declared. Your methods have proven more effective than our traditional approaches. But fighting together requires trust, Tae-ho said, and trust requires understanding. You must understand that humans do not seek glory, we seek results. The only victory that matters is everyone going home alive. The alien soldiers nodded in agreement their earlier mockery replaced by genuine respect. They were beginning to realize that true strength was not about individual power, but about collective protection. Lieutenant Scrix drifted closer to the human diplomat. What do you need from us, Ambassador? He asked. How can we support human operations and reduce these terrible casualties? Combined operations, Tae-ho replied, pulling out coordination plans. Your species have advantages. Humans lack speed, mobility, firepower specialized abilities. Working together, we can achieve what none of us can do alone. The mood in the chamber had transformed completely. The same alien warriors who had mocked human weakness now listened eagerly to plans for joint military operations against the Void Raiders. The atmosphere in the council chamber had changed completely. The same alien soldiers who had entered ready to mock a weak human now sat forward in their chairs listening intently as Tae-ho outlined his alliance proposal. His simple words carried new weight, because they understood the sacrifice behind them. The Void Raiders are not just humanity problem, Tae-ho explained as he spread tactical maps across the table. They are everyone enemy, but instead of working together, we waste time and lives arguing about who is strongest. General Vextar leaned forward, his scaled hands flat against the table surface. What exactly do you propose, Ambassador? He asked. His yellow eyes showed genuine interest instead of mockery. Combined task forces. Tae-ho said, pointing to different sections of the galaxy map. Human stealth technology with Scalari firepower, insectoid hive coordination with crystalline shield matrices. Each species fighting with their strengths instead of against each other. Weaknesses. Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles thoughtfully as he studied the proposed formations. The humans have been doing this already, haven't they? He observed, fighting alongside our forces without taking credit. Lieutenant Scrix nodded eagerly, inside his gas-filled helmet. The Battle of Outer Rim, he said. I heard human ships appeared from nowhere to help our gas mining fleet. Then they disappeared before we could thank them. Captain Park Jimin's stealth squadron, Tae-ho confirmed. They have been running silent support missions for 6 months protecting civilian operations across 3 sectors. No recognition, no glory. Just results. Commander Wrath crystalline body chimed with excitement as she processed the tactical possibilities. If we combined our defensive matrices with human stealth ships and Scalari assault cruisers, she began. The Void Raiders would not stand a chance, Captain Brutax finished. His scarred face showed the first real smile since the meeting began. But such coordination requires trust, real cooperation between species that have been suspicious of each other. Trust starts with respect, Tae-ho said quietly. And respect starts with understanding sacrifice. Every species here has lost people to the raiders. Every soldier here fights for something bigger than themselves. The alien commanders began talking excitedly about joint operations and combined strategies. Their voices overlapped as they discussed weapon compatibility, communication protocols, and shared logistics systems, but Tejo held up his hand for silence. The room went quiet immediately as all attention focused on the human diplomat. "There is one more thing you need to know about humans," he said. General Vextar tilted his reptilian head. "What else should we understand about your species?" he asked. "When we make allies, we keep them," Tejo said. His voice grew hard as stone. "When we make promises, we honor them. And when someone kills our friends," his pause was heavy with meaning, "we never." Forget Lieutenant Scrick's gas swirled nervously in his helmet. "You mean humans hold grudges?" he asked. "I mean humans remember debts," Tejo corrected. "Both kinds. The debts we owe and the debts owed to us. The Void Raiders have killed thousands of our people. They have destroyed our colonies, murdered our families. We will not stop until that debt is paid." Captain Zolm compound, eyes focused on the human with new understanding. "This is not just about stopping raids," he observed. "This is about justice for what has already been taken. Justice and prevention." Tejo agreed. "We cannot bring back the dead, but we can prevent more deaths. We cannot undo the past, but we can secure the future, Commander." Wrath chimed softly, like wind through crystal. "How do we begin this alliance?" she asked. "What are the first steps toward true cooperation?" "We start with what we have been doing," Tejo said, pulling out operational schedules. "Human forces are already coordinating with your fleets, but informally. Now we make it official with shared command structures and unified objectives." Captain Brutax studied the proposed command hierarchy. "This would put human officers in charge of mixed species units," he observed. "Are your people prepared for such responsibility?" "People have been taking that responsibility for months," Tejo replied. "The difference is now everyone will know about it. Instead of humans dying quietly in the background, our sacrifice will be acknowledged and supported." General Vextar stood and extended his clawed hand toward the human diplomat. "Then let us be allies. Ambassador Tejo," he said formally. "Let us honor your son's sacrifice by ending this war together." The gesture was significant in Scolari culture, extending claws toward another. Being was either a threat or a sign of ultimate trust. Tejo understood the meaning and reached out to clasp the alien hand. Lieutenant Scrix floated forward eagerly. "The Geometric Coalition offers our defensive technology for all Alliance ships," he announced. "Our crystalline shields can protect vessels of any design." Captain Zolm moved closer on his 6 legs. "The Hive worlds will provide coordination networks," he declared. "Our mental linking allows perfect battlefield communication between different species." Commander Wrath chimed with harmony like beautiful music. "The Gas Miners Union offers our deep space navigation," he said. "Our knowledge of hidden routes could give Alliance forces tactical advantages." Each species began offering their unique capabilities for the combined war effort. The mood in the chamber shifted from shame and regret to excitement and determination. But Tejo remained focused on practical concerns. This alliance will require sacrifice from everyone, he warned. Human stealth technology is not magic. It requires skilled pilots who may not survive their missions. We understand the cost. General Vextar replied solemnly. "Every species here has buried warriors in this conflict. We are prepared to accept necessary losses." "Good," Tejo said, pulling out detailed operational plans. "Because the first joint mission will be the most dangerous. The Void Raider main base in the Shattered Nebula has never been successfully attacked." Captain Brutax leaned forward with interest. "The shattered nebula is a ship graveyard," he said. "Hundreds of vessels have been destroyed trying to penetrate those defenses. That is why we need combined abilities," Taeho explained. "Human stealth ships can slip past outer defenses, Scolari. Firepower can punch through their main shields. Insectoid coordination can manage complex multi-vector attacks, and crystalline shielding can protect the fleet during withdrawal." Commander Wrath added, "The mission is dangerous but possible with proper." Coordination Lieutenant Scrix studied the tactical maps showing the nebula defenses. "When do we begin?" he asked. "How long to prepare for such an operation?" 3 weeks. Taeho said, "The Void Raiders are planning a major offensive against the core worlds. We must strike first while their main fleet is concentrated at the base." The alien soldiers looked at each other with mixture of excitement and concern. 3 weeks was barely enough time to coordinate between species that had never fought together, Captain. Zolm clicked his mandibles rapidly. "But we have been preparing for this without knowing it." He realized all those informal human support missions were training exercises for joint operations. Exactly. Taeho confirmed, "Your forces already know how to work with human units. The only difference is now we acknowledge what has been happening and optimize our cooperation." General Vex Tar studied the mission timeline. "This will be the largest coordinated attack in galactic history," he observed. "If we succeed, the war could end within months. If we fail, the Void Raiders will destroy every civilized world in the galaxy," Taeho added. "But failure is not an option. My son did not die so that others could live in fear. The weight of responsibility settled on every soldier in the room. They were planning an operation that would either save the galaxy or doom it to eternal war, Commander." Wrath chimed with determination. "Then we will not fail," she declared. "This alliance will succeed because we understand what we are fighting for, not glory or territory," Captain Brutax added, "but the right to exist peacefully, the right to raise families without fear." Lieutenant Scrix nodded inside his gas helmet, "The right to mine asteroids without watching." For raider attacks, he agreed. The right to trade freely between worlds. Captain Zolm clicked his mandibles once in formal agreement. The right to build instead of just survive. He concluded. Taeho looked around the table at faces that now showed respect and determination instead of mockery. "Then let us begin," he said. "The real war starts now, and we will fight it together." The alliance was formed not with grand ceremonies or political speeches, but with simple understanding between warriors who had learned to respect each other's sacrifice. 6 months later, the combined Galactic Defense Fleet achieved its first major victory against the Void Raiders at the Battle of New Sol. The massive engagement lasted 3 days and involved over 2,000 ships from 12 different species, working together as a unified force. Ambassador Taeho stood on the bridge of the flagship watching the battle through holographic displays that showed the entire combat zone. Human stealth ships moved like ghosts through enemy formations, while Scolari dreadnoughts provided devastating firepower from long range. The coordination was perfect. Insectoid fighters swarmed in precise patterns, while crystalline shields protected the Allied fleet from Void Raider plasma weapons, gas-based weapons. From the mining unions created toxic clouds that disabled enemy sensors. General Vex Tar approached the human diplomat with news of the final phase. "The Void Raider flagship is destroyed." "Ambassador," he reported. His scaled face showed fierce satisfaction. "Their entire fleet is in full retreat across all sectors." Taeho nodded without taking his eyes from the tactical displays. "Casualties?" he asked immediately. The question had become automatic for him after months of coordinated battles. "Light losses." On all sides, the general reported proudly, "Human stealth tactics reduced our exposure, while combined firepower eliminated targets quickly. Your son's sacrifice was not in vain. This victory saves thousands of lives." The human diplomat remained silent. For a moment, thinking of Captain Lee Dong-woo and all the other young soldiers who had died before this alliance could be formed, their deaths had bought the time needed to forge cooperation between former rivals. "What is our next target, General?" Tae-ho asked, finally. His voice carried the weariness of someone who had seen too much war, but also the determination of someone who would not stop until justice was achieved. "The Void Raider home base in the Shattered Nebula." Vextar replied with grim satisfaction. "It will not be easy, but with our combined fleet and the tactics we have developed together, we will end this war." Tae-ho finished quietly. "And maybe other fathers will not have to ask who killed their children." Captain Zolm approached. From the communications station, his compound eyes bright with excitement. "Ambassador," he said, "my queen wishes to offer humanity permanent alliance status. She says any species that fights with such honor deserves the highest respect." Similar messages had been coming from allied worlds throughout the day. The humans who had been mocked as weak diplomats 6 months ago were now recognized as the galaxy's most capable warriors, not because they sought glory, but because they understood the true meaning of Sacrifice Lieutenant Scrick's float.